And welcome back to this final segment of this week's episode of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. I'm your host, Sean Meyers, joined by co-host Justin Lowery, joining us for what is called the Trending Topics segment, in which we talk about some big happenings in the world of professional wrestling. And Justin, we're going to talk about two things that affect WWE programming going forward. First, the news that came out, I believe, yesterday, of the official agreements in place now for both SmackDown for 5 years on Fox on Friday nights upcoming, starting a little over a year from now. And then the big news, because that had been confirmed about a month ago, is that Raw will be staying on USA. So the flagship stays with the same network. To me, that's good news for WWE. You have that established show on USA. It's been on USA for so many years. Vast majority of the 25 years has been on USA. So sticking with that network seems like a win-win.
Yeah, I mean, but all of a sudden now, isn't SmackDown on the better channel? I mean, Raw still has the better time slot, but, I mean, more people get Fox than they do USA. I mean, Fox is a major network. I'm interested to see what SmackDown will become because, they're going to want, Fox is going to want big-time stars on that show. And, I mean, at least the first couple months will probably be amazing. It's going to be interesting to see what happens between Raw and SmackDown.
Does it make it sort of internal competition by having the two separate networks more so than if they were both on Fox or both had stayed on USA?
Oh, I think so because, I mean, they're run by different, USA is an NBC, under that banner. So, yeah, I mean, you're going to have executives on each side wanting to opt the other station now, which maybe that's going to be the only way we get, the old Monday Night Wars, WCW, WWE. Now it's like literally SmackDown Raw. Different channels, different people running the stations. I mean, it can be nothing but good, right?
You would hope.
I wonder if we're going to have separate shows by then.
With the separate rosters.
Right, yeah. I can see Fox going, well, no, we want Roman Reigns too, or we want Brock. If Brock Lesnar's just showing up on Raw, no, we're paying you billions of dollars. We want Brock Lesnar on our show. So that's also going to be interesting when that time comes on how they're going to handle that.
Rumor was, and it seemed pretty substantiated, that it was $1 billion for 5 years for Fox to get the rights to SmackDown. Have you heard anything about the money on Raw? You'd have to think it's got to be close to, if not exceeding that amount, because Raw has been more established and typically does better ratings.
Yeah, but I haven't heard money-wise, but what was that? Fox deal was, a 5-year deal, I believe? I don't think the Raw deal was 5 years. I think it was only like 3. So, I mean, that's interesting to me. I would assume Fox dished out more money. I think they're, they have more money to play with than, USA, even though it's NBC. I mean, they're not putting it on NBC, so they're not going to give you the type of money that, that Fox would give. At least with WWE, it's going to get spread around everywhere. It's not like, well, this money's just strictly for SmackDown.
You would think at least. I mean,
what you're going to see from that money is them really try to go after really big names outside of WWE and bring them in. Cough, cough, Kenny Omega, Young Bucks. I mean, now they're following the Young Bucks on Twitter. They're mentioning them with their feud with the New Day with the video games.
But was it ever a lack of having money that prevented them from bringing guys in the past? I mean, they've cut back on a lot of production expenses.
We don't want to pay this guy this much. They can now throw the world. I mean, Kenny Omega says, no, he's staying in New Japan, blah, 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 blah. He wants to change wrestling. And I believe he really does want to try to build up a different brand. But if they come at him with money that New Japan cannot even come close to, how do you say no to that? And I think it just gives them more money to throw around at people, which will kind of like jump into another topic you would like to talk about, NXT UK. I don't know how necessary that is. I don't know how well that's going to go. To me, that's just them saying, we want to have all the best wrestlers in the world signed because we don't want them going to any other promotion. We don't want them in New Japan. We don't want them in Ring of Honor. We don't want them over, in Ireland, with the ICW. we don't want guys in other promotions getting a name, because I think for the first time in a long time, they're seeing wrestlers outside of their own company starting to get name recognition within the States, within the casual fan base too. And give Vince McMahon credit. He'll choke you out. Before anything becomes an issue, he's trying to stop it before anything really blows up. That's why you have all these guys signing to NXT, all these guys on 205 Live, now NXT UK. I mean, he has so much talent. And just think, if some of these guys weren't signed to them and over at Ring of Honor or somewhere else, TNA even, what another company could do with this much talent. They could rival them, given, having a backer with enough money to try. I mean, right now they're just collecting talent, which I understand why talent's signing, because they're getting paid more than, doing anything else. But at the same time, I think the talent's hurting themselves because they're never going to get featured in a prominent way. I mean,
especially if you're in North America, you probably grew up a WWE fan. So it might be a lifelong dream just to work there, even if you're not going to be a superstar as you would be in a different promotion.
Right. I mean, for me, I'm dying to see somebody challenge to WWE. Dying. We've talked about this personally. You are more of a WWE fan. I classify myself as a wrestling fan. I watch WWE because it's wrestling, and it's basically the only one we got. I would have no problem switching the channel if something better was on wrestling-wise. I'm not loyal to the WWE. I'm loyal to a good product, and I will go to the best product. I don't have DirecTV. I don't get access. I can't watch New Japan. Like you
could pay online, I believe, right?
Yeah, which I never do, anything like that. I do watch Ring of Honor on a weekly basis. We get their syndicated, 1 hour show on the weekends. I keep up by reading online. That's how I go about, watching other promotions and stuff. I'll watch on YouTube if I hear about a certain match. I'll try to find it online and watch it. But to me, that's what WWE's doing, And the fact that Ring of Honor was booked a show at Madison Square Garden, WrestleMania weekend. I was like, oh, that's awesome. This is huge news.
And Vince put an end to that.
Vince put an end to it. Even though he doesn't really run the Garden anymore because it's too expensive for him. He runs Barclays Center. All of a sudden, whoa, no, we're putting a stop to that. And, I mean, I guess on his part, that's smart business. He's making sure the underdog doesn't, come up and bite him. But it sucks for wrestling because it's just the monopoly. And I think that's why WWE becomes so stagnant at times, because there's no one on their heels pushing them to be better except themselves. And sometimes you need that extra push from an outside source.
Well, let's talk a little bit about different promotions under the umbrella now. NXT gets great reviews, especially for the takeovers. While the weekly programming is good, and that's a big selling point for the network, it's the NXT takeovers that really garner all the attention for being great shows, and I think a lot of the true wrestling fans, the hardcore fans like yourself, Justin, actually might prefer that the takeover to the WWE pay-per-views more times than not. That being said, they've tried to expand beyond NXT. They've done a ton of tournaments, starting with the Cruiserweight Classic that turned into 205 Live, which is a good show, but it's not really getting a lot of headlines. It's sort of under the radar, and there's been some issues with that. But that was a separate division that originally was part of Raw. Now it's pretty much entirely on its own. They have NXT, and now after about a year plus of stalling, they finally come through with NXT UK. They just announced this prior to the second UK tournament, that it's going to be its own brand, and seemingly it will be similar to NXT with weekly programming, and you would figure maybe at points they will have their own live event pay-per-view type shows. But let's talk a little bit about what NXT UK will mean, other than just finding a home for guys like Tyler Bate and Pete Dunne and some of the other guys, Mark Andrews, that have popped up here and there on NXT because they don't really have a permanent home. So you get those guys in there, but you're going to have to bring a lot more talent in. So do you see this resulting in even more signings of Europeans, or are they just going to throw some NXT people that may or may not have a UK background over there because they don't have enough time on the 1 hour of NXT? Do you throw 205 Live guys over there? Do you throw main roster guys potentially over there. How do you see this unfolding, and what does it mean for fans of WWE's overall product?
I think they're going to stick with the UK guys. I think they're just, strictly going to sign the best UK talent around, which there's tons over there. I mean, a lot of people in the States don't know about them because a lot of people don't pay attention.
Well, the big ones would be guys like Zack Sabre and Marty Scurll, who are probably not on the verge of joining the company for this.
Right. I think they would love to have them, but I don't think right now they're going to get them. I'm looking forward to it. The weekly shows I think will become, probably what you see on NXT. Good to average. I'm going to assume they're going to get, special takeovers, right? But my question is, when do they get theirs? Because NXT takeovers are usually the night before a bigger pay-per-view.
Well, you're going with you assume these are all going to be based overseas, England, Ireland, whatever.
Right. They should have their own separate, takeovers. And what's going to suck about that is, at least for us here in the States, the time differential. So, when it airs live, it's going to be when most people it's going to be like mid-afternoon. So if you do it on a Saturday, it's going to be like 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Better than a weekday, at least, which is what they did for the Greatest Royal Rumble.
If you want to watch it live, you have to make sure you're available at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which is a weird time. We're not used to watching wrestling events at that time.
Do you see a scenario where a guy like a Finn Balor or a Sheamus ever go over there for more than a one-time appearance?
No. One-off, how about, could this be a way, which we're both fans of this guy, is there any way that they could entice Neville to come back?
Oh, man, he could anchor that entire promotion.
Exactly. I don't know what type of damage has been done between their relationship, but wouldn't it be nice if they could repair it enough to have him be like, one of the faces of that show? Especially for the current audience who actually knows who he is. I mean, I would love to see it. I don't know if it's possible.
Well, so there's still some details that need to be ironed out, and I'm sure that the executives know exactly what they want to do. We as fans don't. But I think they announced 4 or 5 2-night tour dates for when they're going to be doing this, and they're spaced out over the span of 3 or 4 months. They could get a lot of TV tapings then, and those could, last. You could do basically 4 or 5 tapings in a single night if you really want to stretch things out, kind of like how NXT does. The question is, does this become a brand where they're wrestling 3 or 4 nights every single week eventually? And to do that, how much is it going to take in terms of effort to make this happen? Because they've already announced they're going to have tag team titles and they're going to have a women's title over there. Are they spreading too thin by doing something like this? Because then if you take away NXT talent to go over there, maybe you take away a couple 205 Live guys, now you have basically 5 different. You have Raw, SmackDown, 205 Live, NXT, NXT UK, plus their annual tournaments with at least the women and maybe another Cruiserweight Classic upcoming. Do you have enough talent out there to properly showcase everyone?
The answer to that is yes, absolutely. I mean, without a shadow of a doubt, they have enough talent. The question is, for the average fan, that's a lot of wrestling to watch.
And I'm like OCD, where I have to watch everything, whether not live, but eventually. So adding another week, an hour every week, that's a lot, because then you factor in there's already 7+ hours, and then if you count Total Divas, Total Bellas.
Yeah, for the people watching at home, I get on this guy because he'll watch a show from 4 months ago. There's already like 2 storylines, back, and you'll go back and watch it. And
Justin, I think you froze up. No one can hear you. Better to stop talking.
All right.
Joking, JK.
Austin, baby. I mean, yeah, that's a lot for me to watch. Am I going to be able to catch every episode? Probably not. Will I go back and watch like you? I don't do that.
Well, don't you see that being a main reason why 205 Live suffers? Because there's just too much stuff that it's oversaturation. If there wasn't an NXT and there wasn't, these tournaments that they have every several months, 205 Live might have more significance.
Right. Oh, no, I agree. It's too much. And I think 205 Live, that should be taped with like NXT. I think they would benefit having that type of crowd instead of doing it after SmackDown. That's just my opinion. I think half the crowd leave. SmackDown crowds aren't that very big anyway. You might get like 5,000 people there, then half of them leave. But then you're sitting in an arena that sits 12,000 with 2,500 people all scattered that, might be into maybe 700 out of those people are really into it, and the rest are just there because they paid for the ticket and they're there to watch.
Right. So, nonetheless, aside from all the talking about NXT or 205 Live or Raw or SmackDown, NXT UK, good thing going forward for WWE then?
I'm going to say it's a good thing. And going back to the previous point with the money from, Fox, I think we're already seeing it being put to use, because the reason it took so long to get it going is because they said they didn't have the funds. Well,
it's expensive to send a camera crew over there fairly frequently.
From Fox, all of a sudden, here's, NXT UK. So I think we're already seeing the money be put to use.
And if there was any concern that WWE Network would maybe lose a little bit of focus with these big TV deals, they're finding other ways to make the network significant. Because there's rumors NXT might come to cable television.
Yes, Fox Sports 1. There's nothing set in stone, but I guess there are talks possibly that could happen.
And if it does, now you have something else that's exclusive to the network that could get fans, especially a large contingent in 4 or 5 countries overseas, to tune into the network.
I've talked to you before. I would like to see more documentaries and shows on the network, just not wrestling shows. But I would like to see, more like they started off strong in that regard, and they kind of went away from that stuff. I would love to see the Stone Cold podcast come back. More. I think Edge and Christian. I think they're getting a season 2. I mean, that was entertaining stuff. I would like to see more of that on there.
How about the Practical Joker show or whatever that was, Punked or what was it called?
Well, I don't even remember what it was called, but it was the first season wasn't too bad.
You remember the name?
The second season was like beyond awful. I mean, bring back Jerry Springer. I mean, he had a.
Oh, let's not do that.
Jerry, baby.
Yeah, it's not a good show when neither one of us can even remember the name of it.
Well, it's gonna bother me.
Tweet us. Send us a tweet. 5-Star Pod Wrestle.
Tell us, what.
Make fun of us. We'll look it up and get back to our audience on that one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've reached a point where we don't remember what we're even talking about anymore. So let's call it a day here. Once again, big happenings, though, just to recap. Raw staying on USA, and then also the announcement recently that a new promotion, NXT UK, will be launching in the months to come. That's going to do it for Trending Topics and this week's overall installment of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. But for my co-host, Justin Lowery, this is Sean Meyers signing off. Thank you for tuning in, and make sure you check out the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling each and every week. All right, have a good night.